Along this video, we're gonna see why the radio until today is one of the best way of communications. You have YouTube and Twitter and I don't know, WhatsApp, and you have other kind of social media, Instagram, TikTok. Who cares? The radio is so important today because, for example, only on ratings it overpassed the television in much more of the countries of the world. The technology of the radio changed a lot in the last 20 years. Now it's a digital radio, and I'm not talking about internet radio that everybody knows about it. I'm talking about that the transmission is digital, so they can transmit other kind of stuff, maybe images, maybe data, maybe the time. Yes, the radio changed a lot. It's an amazing way of communication. You can have a radio on a cell phone, on a television. You can have a radio on television. Incredibly, yes. You can have a radio on your work, on your car. You can have a radio in any place. Even you can work. Listen to the radio. It's not the best way to work, but I think it's better to, I don't know. Well, who cares? Sorry, I get distracted with this kind of stuff. So, we're gonna start from the beginning. In the beginning, the radio transmission wasn't so fancy as today. Radio transmission was something like an experimental way. People talking knowing that maybe in the other side nobody's listening to them. But in the beginning, they started to have some kind of content. For example, in the beginning, the radio was just musical. It's something that you can understand completely. When you don't know what to say, you just put music. And there is no compact stuff, there is no computer, there is nothing. Only you put the player, that is something like a graphone or something like that with a disc, and you put the microphone. That is the same microphone that you're going to use to talk, okay? We're gonna listen to some music, and you put the microphone to the device. There is no really big connection, there is no electricity. Maybe the microphone could be so expensive that they're going to have only one. I didn't tell you, but I must say that I was working on radio like 20 years. That's why I know a bunch of stuff of this one. So this started like, I don't know, people just talking, people just practicing. It didn't exist something like real radios. They were known as crystal radios. The crystal radios is this device that you're watching right now in this moment. You need to scratch it to clean the rust of the copper, and maybe you can have some kind of reception. It's amazing that the copper radio is still using until today, but you can only receive AM radio because FM radio was creation really late with other kind of military stuff because the Americans were working with some kind. Who cares? So you can only receive AM radio, and that's it. And there is no really big magic around it. There is no amplificators. There is no fancy lights and big devices that receive a stereo. There is no stereo. In AM is no stereo. But after the first transmission of the time of the world, it's not the first transmission. The first transmission is assigned to Enrique Susini in 1920. He broadcast the Parsifal opera from Richard Strauss in Argentina, by the way, in El Teatro Coliseo. There is something like Coliseum Theater, could be the really big translation from Spanish to English. But they believe that it's the first. It's not the first at all. You can find a bunch of stuff of people that were broadcasting from the very beginning, but the history said that it was the first. So maybe in this moment you can understand that how this technology started to appear in the universe of the technology and the broadcast. So they broadcast music. Music was expensive until, I don't know, Spotify appeared. But before that, you need to have the record. Even records, they weren't available in that time. Before the Second War, most of the music playing were people playing instruments inside the radio because they have no real records of music. They didn't exist. We're complaining about telephones and dial-up and all the stuff. They didn't have any records, any physical record. You need to play the music. Actually, when you get out from an opera, if you go to an opera, they give you a way of partiture with all the stuff too, so you can play it in your piano that you have in your house. That's why everybody have their own piano in their houses, because they play the same music. If you know how to play a piano, I don't know how to play a guitar, and it cost me a fortune. So we already talked about how this technology started. And in the 80s and 90s, depending on the area, they started to appear a new kind of transmission, the frequency modulated technology. That technology was super different to the AM. It didn't have a really big range, but it sounds better. That's the only stuff, because AM is still a really big radio until today, depending on the country. Well, now you have the worst case scenario for radios. In 1970 or something, MTV appears 70 or 80. Let me check. Okay, I found something on internet that says it was 1981. Yes, I like to be prepared for my YouTube videos. Okay, 1981. Okay, was close to 70s. Was the last that 70s show, and appeared some kind of video that was known "Video Killed the Radio Star" by the Buggles. Yes, I needed to research a little bit. I forgot the name of the band. I knew about the "Video Killed the Radio." MTV didn't have any music on the beginning. So Video Killed the Radio Star, it was played like 20 times by day, but I'm losing my train of thoughts in here. Yes, we were talking about radio. In some countries, newspapers, they're not so easy to achieve. Why this? It's impossible to believe that the people, the news and the technology to spread the news wasn't the best. So you need to print it, you need to send it in a one boat or a ship, but not in a plane, because plane didn't exist. Oh my god. Oh my god, the people are complaining about how the social media today are so invading our lives. So reading the newspaper, that was a really easy practice that you have in that time, was the best way to move news around one big country. For example, United States, only taking the newspaper and read it. This is the best part. In that time, I'm talking about the Paleolithic era. The fathers didn't want their kids to listen to the radio because they have funny stuff and maybe they're become violent like video games nowadays. In the last part, I need to explain why radio is so important today. Most of the technology that makes the radio work changed a lot for everywhere. Most of the AM signals are disappearing. Right here in Europe, disappear completely. But the FM transmissions, no, they're still working. In United States, you still have an AM and FM transmissions, but right here in Europe, you have nothing of it. Much more of the radio were changing in the last, we can say, 10 years. Now the radio is digital. We can talk about the DAB+, that is the technology that we're using right here in Europe. The DAB+ is works something like the antenna of the cell phones. You can have several antennas, so the radios pay for the antennas and you can distribute any frequency that you want. So the radios that you have nowadays, the DAB+ radios, they receive that reception like a cell phone because it works like a cell phone, and you can have a bunch of radios, even radios that are kilometers away from here. For example, I can listen my favorite radio, NPO Radio 5 right here in Netherlands. Most of the countries, they have a national radio, a state and public radio. BBC in London, everybody knows about it. Right here in the Netherlands, we used to have Radio Netherlands, now it changed, it's the NPO1, that is news, NPO2, I don't know. NPO4, I think, is classical music. NPO5 is old music, but it's not old music. It's not just old music, it's really old music. I think this is the whole story of the radio. And why the radio is still working until today? Because it's easy to listen. The day the radio disappear, I'm gonna buy cryptos.